If I could give the briefest of overviews on my position on romance, I think that pursuing romantic relationships with women are a waste of time, that almost everything to gain in a relationship with them is slanted in their favor, and even the simple act of getting a date has had its difficulty extended to levels of absurdity. I came to this belief after years of seeing this repetitive cycle of me starting a dialogue with the woman who afterwards can never reciprocate or show any romantic interest play itself out time and time again. And what they effectively said to me as a collective was, we're not going to give you a chance no matter how much we compliment you or how long we've been speaking to you, and you'll never have anything close to a fulfilling relationship with any of us. The opposition to my opinions generally came in two camps. The first was a group of guys who tried to peddle the narrative that I was this oddity with so many faults and imperfections that the only way I could ever hope to appeal to a glorious woman was to undergo some arduous cycle of self-improvement. The other was a group that tried to be nicer but was equally dismissive and condescending toward me, usually ignoring my points and spouting off unsubstantiated claims that eventually I would meet this amazing woman who reciprocated my attraction and ride off into the sunset during the magic romance year. I always found this to be a very stupid prediction because I personally don't know anyone who either dated for a long time or married someone after years of getting rejected over and over again. And true to form, we've seen things stay the same every year with no woman ever showing interest first. There was a video I never released but that I wrote a script for, and it explored an alternate reality where I dated some woman, got married, and had children. It was while writing this scenario out and describing some of the things that could go wrong that I had a realization. In the event that I ended up dating or being in a relationship and it went in the direction that led to either a breakup or divorce, I would be blamed no matter what. And we can surmise this from one fact, which is that many of my detractors love creating scenarios for why this happened to me that they have no evidence of. You've had men write that I probably did something, or one notorious buffoon write that I would prematurely cut off a woman who was interested. And these comments are not from them seeing me do something that supports their claim. After all, none of them have ever met me, let alone seen me ask out a woman. And in the absence of evidence, they'd rather create fan fiction to justify why this has happened to me. And this very much influenced my current way of thinking, which is, what's the point of trying to have a conversation with people who are going to automatically take an antagonistic position to you solely based on their refusal to criticize women under any circumstance? I think about the first time I ever asked a girl out. I was 13 and we had known each other for several years. When she rejected me, I was shocked. I thought she would be open to at least a date. The second time I was rejected, it was by a classmate who had a boyfriend, so I wasn't terribly surprised. The third time was with a classmate in high school who I really wasn't close to or friends with, so it again wasn't a shock. But as time went on and I started using the internet to try and meet someone, the number of instances where I was turned down increased substantially. It seemed as if no matter what I did, whether I asked out a woman in person or online, if I spoke to one of them for weeks or months on end, I would get the same result. And it's always been this way right from the beginning. Some of my detractors will say that by believing nothing will happen with women, I am somehow creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, this is a really dumb observation because I've had multiple instances where I did believe it would work out and it didn't. But also because my pessimism is based on a very clear pattern, which is that the aftermath of appeasement and compromise was always disappointment and non-fulfillment. My rhetoric has been fairly consistent. I believe talking to a woman for the purpose of trying to form a relationship is a waste of time and would much rather focus my attention on pursuits that I find fulfilling. Somehow this position was deemed extreme, and I've had these people try to link me to subcultures that I've never affiliated with, various shooters, or advise me to end my life. These people really tried to create this idea that if you were a single man and you criticized women, you were entitled, you were a bad person, you were evil, and you were no better than men who had actually harmed them. And at the same time as these women defenders were trying to take a moral high ground against me, I noticed their deafening silence when some members of their own team berated me with remarks aimed at my ethnicity. See my unpopular color for more details of that. My policy is one of fairness. I think if people can come on here and attack me over my ethnicity, I should be able to say what I want about women. Unlike my detractors, I can call out the scum that's nominally on my side. Take this comment from Eddie, for example. Years ago, I would have disagreed to prostitutes, but in reality, all women are prostitutes. You don't even need to read the rest of this comment to know how incorrect and dumb this statement is. My viewpoint is that people take antagonistic positions towards men who have trouble attracting women, and this includes making generalizations about these men, one of which being that we supposedly just want sex. These generalizations are very ridiculous, as the lengths that a man often goes to in trying to attract a woman would make no sense if he just wants intercourse, when he could acquire this from a prostitute simply by paying some sum of money. I've also said that women are not worth the efforts that these romance aficionados encourage you to pursue while trying to court them, and I know it was not this way in the past. Neither of my grandmothers sat on the computer wasting men's time year after year, nor did my mother. Comments like these are useless to the cause. It's not men versus women, it's lies versus people. But what I don't understand is why, if it's so easy for me to condemn comments like this, why is it so hard for my detractors or people who don't agree with me to condemn comments from those that are on their side, insulting my appearance, calling me racial slurs, or telling me to end my own life? I'll tell you why. Because while many members of the opposition posture as caring about you or giving their unsolicited advice for your supposed benefit, they're just as wanting of your demise as anyone else. They're just a little nicer about it. Some of my detractors have this belief that if you want something, you're supposed to do anything and everything to get it. One of them, even in admitting that self-improvement doesn't guarantee you a woman, said that I should give myself the best chance by following their unsolicited advice. If I could make a comparison, imagine if you wanted to make some lemonade, and someone told you that in order to do so, you would have to buy at least 300 lemons to root out the good ones from the bad ones, in addition to having a specific kind of glass and making it a certain time of day. A normal person who's given this advice would react with recoil at the idea of having to do so much just for some lemonade, and know that it is not worth it doing all of that. I fundamentally do not believe a man should have to engage in weeks, months, or years worth of activities / alterations to himself just to possibly get a date with a woman. I think there's something wrong with not only the disparity, but pandering to and attempting to normalize it as well. Now, the main romantic life I care about is my own. The only time I show an interest in someone else's is if it's a woman I'm romantically interested in, and that's becoming increasingly rarer as time passes. But something I've noticed and never spoke that much on was how often it seemed that I would meet someone who had the same problem. I have known my best friend for over 15 years, and we went to different high schools and colleges only to end up with the same result of being single despite not wanting to be after asking out women over and over again for years on end. And as I've thought back to earlier periods, such as when I was in high school, in retrospect, I did notice that there were very few couples in my class. Like, you would have one or two male students dating some female students, and then you would have either a bunch of single male students like myself and female students who were either single or who were dating some guy that didn't go to the same school. And just to further my point, I attended 3 different high schools, so this means I was around more students than I would have been if I had just gone to one. And it really seemed like actual couples were far few and in between. Like, for every one couple I would see, there were loads of male students that maybe talked about some girl that they thought was hot, but it was just another unrequited attraction that didn't go anywhere. Come to think of it, out of all the guys that have come here and tried to offer either unsolicited advice or attack me over being single or a mixture of both, none of them have ever proved they were with a woman. Sure, some of them claim that they are, but I could claim that I own $1 million. What's a claim without proof? Some weeks back, I did a video on an article from The Hill titled "Most Young Men Are Single, Most Young Women Are Not." In that video, I read where the article had statistics about over 60% of young men in the US being single and over 30% not even bothering with trying to either date a woman or start a relationship with one of them. This was a very significant read on my part because I never had statistics to support my belief that the majority of men, at least in America, were affected by this. To be clear, I always had a feeling that there were loads of guys who just were not getting anything from women, whether that was having a relationship or having any of them express romantic interest in them, but I never would have guessed it was as large as it is. So, going back to my earlier points about always having noticed how few couples there were when I was in school, I want to tie it to something else. For several years, I've had an assortment of mostly men coming online to attack me for my romantic views, and as a collective, they've tried to push this narrative that I am a weird, nerdy, ugly, unconfident, strange individual. But what does it say when my circumstance is one that the silent majority of young men, at least in the US, are in? It means that people for so long have tried to take an unfortunate circumstance that has affected loads of men and hyper focus on what they perceive as the specific flaws of one guy in their attempts to employ a just world fallacy that negates just how widespread single men have become. Based on these statistics, I would be weird if I was with a woman, not the other way around. It would be one thing if the number of single men in America was like 10% or 20% or even a quarter of us. Maybe then you could say it's this weird fringe, strange subsection of guys. Instead, the number's much larger and encompasses a majority of us. That is not the result of personal failings of a particular man, but a lousy system so rancid that most of us aren't with women either by choice or crappy circumstances. Romantic relationships are supposed to be an enjoyable experience for both partners involved with genuinely liking the company of the other person. They're not supposed to be an excuse for a man to talk to dozens of women who don't like him or to be attacked by others when he chooses to express himself. The article mentions that there are single women of the same age group, but it's only 34%. The article speculates this may be due to either women dating each other or dating older men. In my view, it's a combination of many factors, including the aforementioned too. Another is that there is a group of women who are single by choice, meaning that they've had plenty of men show interest in them but have concluded none of us are good enough for them. This is why you'll often see women on dating websites for very different reasons than the men that frequent the same sites. Whereas the men are there to actually find a partner after years of a dry spell, the women are there simply to get attention. There was a person who once came to one of my videos and claimed that women who saw them would be less likely to be interested in me romantically, and it took everything I had not to fall on the floor laughing. The reason for me finding humor in this claim was that I had started making videos after having bad experiences with trying to court women, so this person was telling me I am creating the same result for myself that was already in effect when I started making videos. It's like telling an unemployed person that by ranting about not being able to get a job that they won't be hired when they already were unemployed, and this is what caused them to start complaining about it. You can't take the aftermath of something and attribute it as the cause. Furthermore, I can provide proof with pictures, news articles, and videos that women have dated men who are overweight, poor, gay, have criminal records, etc. So this idea that they have some inherent standards or specific things that they like is just hogwash peddled by liars on this website. And that's why I don't believe in self-improvement. As long as I can prove that men with supposedly undesirable characteristics have dated women, and these pricks can't prove that doing all of the various quote-unquote improving things they tell you to do guarantees you a woman, then there's no point listening to them. Imagine having such little incentive to get a man to ask out a woman that you try to make him afraid of speaking out about this with the vague threat that addressing this makes him unappealing to the same group of people who already found him unappealing. I did a video a few months ago called We Can't Go Back, and much of it focused on the amount of things that had been lost to me since this romance saga began. How I had ambitions of wanting to get married, having a family, and how in the time between when this started and now, many of the people who I wanted to see those milestones with, whom I was close, have died. And this is the primary reason I'm never going to get over what they did, which was masquerade as a group of people who were different from each other, when in reality they were one and the same, and waste so much of my time that multiple people I care about now will never see anything good that comes out of being with one of them. It's somewhat ironic because there are actual things relating to women for a man to be afraid of, which only intensify in their severity in the event that you're successful in forming a romance with one of them. In the event that I married a woman, it's very possible that she would have the ulterior motive of trying to exact some financial transaction via divorce. In the event that I had a kid with the woman who I wasn't married to, it's very possible that she could put me on child support as the court system favors the mother. Those are the things I'm worried about, not making a video someone doesn't like. Lastly, I feel very vindicated by that article, and more specifically, the statistics it reported, because it confirms much of what I suspected but never had numbers to support. It revealed that in America, the status of being a young man who is not in a relationship with a woman is normal, that you're part of a silent majority who just are not with one of them. And if they can reject or be uninterested in a majority of young men in the US, what does that tell us? I'll tell you. It was never about the way I looked or what I wore or my personality or how much money I had. Me not being with a woman was a direct result of the mind games, time wasting, and red herring tactics that they as a collective have employed since the debut of social media. Me being single was just an excuse for people online to harass me and try to make me feel bad about myself, and it didn't work. I will never apologize for telling the truth about this situation, and especially not after finding out just how right I always was.